Betrayed Alex during my bachelorette party with his old nemesis, lost in my guilt while he unknowingly comforts my deceit. My fiancé Alex, male 32 and I female 28, have been together for 4 years and were supposed to get married on the 28th of December. We had our bachelor/bachelorette parties last weekend because everyone was in town for the holiday. That's why we're having the wedding on the 28th. Everyone will be here anyway for the holiday, so coming to the wedding won't be a big thing. Alex is everything I want in a man. He's kind. He's funny and charming. He's tall and handsome. He's helpful. He's a leader. He's successful at his work with a great future. He's really thoughtful. One time, we were shopping and I looked at this butterfly decoration just in passing, and later on I got it for my birthday. He remembered that I liked it and went back and bought it for me and surprised me with it. Our sex life is very satisfying to me, and I think to him as well. He's not perfect, of course, and we have our disagreements like any other couple, but we're great together. I feel safe and loved with him. When we first got together, the subject of our past partners came up. I didn't have a lot of past partners as all my relationships were long-term. I had 3 boyfriends before Alex. The previous one was Jake, fake name. Jake was gorgeous. He had a very magnetic personality and always dominated whatever room he walked into. I felt so lucky when he chose me to be his girlfriend. We had a very intense physical connection that I sort of lost myself in. In every other way, Jake was terrible. He cheated on me. He stood me up on multiple occasions. He forgot important events like my birthday and my best friend's engagement party. I finally broke up with him. He didn't seem to really care about it, though, which hurt. He just ghosted me when I said enough. The reason I mention this is because I told Alex about Jake. At first he didn't connect the dots, but when I described Jake, he asked me if it was Jake, last name. I said, how do you know? And he told me that Jake had stolen his girlfriend from high school when they were all freshmen in college. It really hurt Alex as he thought he would marry this girl. Jake later dumped her and she tried to get back with Alex, but Alex rejected her, telling me that she was disgusting. Alex was quiet around me for a few days after that, but he came around thankfully. During my bachelorette party last weekend, one of my bridesmaids, Claire, fake name, invited a bunch of our old friend group to the Airbnb we were renting as a surprise. I thought they had all moved away, but they showed up, and yes, you guessed it, Jake was there too. I was pretty drunk, but I can't say I didn't know what I was doing. Jake was still really good looking and he talked only to me that night. He only flirted with me and no one else. He was charming and my inhibitions were down, and we eventually went to a bedroom and we had sex. The next morning I was mortified. I told Jake that it meant nothing and he needed to leave and not get in contact with me again. Jake told me that he changed and was a serious person and serious about me. I told him to go and to please just shut up and leave. He seemed sad, but he left. I made sure to make him swear to forget about it all, and he did swear. I told Claire to keep quiet about it and to not tell anyone about Jake. She was the only one who really knew about our past relationship as she was part of the friend group. She agreed and said it was no big deal and one last fling before marriage. I think she was the only one who saw us go back to the bedroom, but I can't be sure. All I know is that Jake and I were the least drunk people there, and we were pretty drunk. Meanwhile, it's been eating at me all the time. I can't sleep or eat. I'm afraid my wedding dress will be too big for me because I have this fear in the pit of my stomach and I throw up when I think about Jake and what I did, which is all the time. I think about it all the time. I have to confess to someone, so I think a bunch of internet strangers is the easiest way to do it. I know I'm terrible and I know I F this up. I can't lose Alex. Why didn't I think of him when I was there last Saturday? Why didn't I consider Alex? I'm such a F idiot. He's the best thing that ever happened to me and Jake is the worst. Alex has started to notice my changed attitude. I lied to him, again, and told him that I think I'm coming down with the flu and that he should stay away for a few days. Meanwhile, I'm crying my eyes out in bed and Alex is being his usual great self and bringing me homemade chicken noodle soup his mom made. I can't tell him, but I can't stand this. Does it go away over time? Update 1. The truth is out, Alex knows, and the consequences have been worse than I could have imagined. I have no one to blame but myself. Thursday evening, Alex didn't come home after work. I thought maybe he was staying late, but around 9 p.m., I got a text from him. It was a photo of me and Jake kissing at my bachelorette party. No words. Just the photo. I panicked and immediately texted Claire, asking if she told Alex. She replied that he deserved to know the truth. I don't think she did it to be malicious. Maybe she was feeling guilty herself, but at that moment I was freaking out. I started spamming Alex's phone with calls and texts, begging him to talk to me. He left me on read. Then I logged onto social media and saw that Alex had posted that our wedding was cancelled because the woman I thought I was marrying turned out to be someone I didn't know. People started calling and messaging me, asking what was going on. I didn't know what to say. I panicked and lied, telling them we had a huge argument, but that we were working it out. Meanwhile, Alex was replying to comments under his post, saying things like, "She knows what she did, and there's nothing left to say." Friday night, Jake showed up at my apartment. He said he was sorry, claimed he didn't know Alex was my fiancé, and tried to explain himself. I told him it didn't matter. What we did ruined the best thing in my life, and I wanted Jake gone. I told him to leave and not come back. He tried to linger, saying something about how we could figure this out, but I slammed the door on him. He makes my skin crawl. Then, on Saturday morning, the hammer dropped. Alex's older brother, Mark, showed up with two of Alex's groomsmen. They knocked, came in, and started packing up Alex's things, his clothes, his personal items, even some of the furniture that belonged to him. I tried to talk to them, begging them to tell me where Alex was or how I could reach him, but they just ignored me or told me they didn't know where he was, which was probably a lie. Mark kept repeating that there was nothing to talk about. When they were done, Mark told me that Alex wanted me to keep the engagement ring. He said Alex didn't want it back because he had no use for it and selling it wouldn't make up for what had happened. He also told me Alex would be sending a check to cover my share of the cancelled wedding costs, and that his half of the lease was paid for. I begged Mark to at least put Alex on the phone with me and that he deserved some kind of closure by yelling at me and I'd at least be able to apologize where he could hear my voice. He just said Alex has all the closure he needs and to stop contacting him and just leave him alone and I've done enough. Mark used to be so kind to me, like a big brother. He was excited about the wedding, calling himself the future crazy uncle. Now he was cold and distant, talking like I was a stranger. That was when it really hit me. Alex was gone and my life was gone too. I can't afford to stay in the apartment. Alex paid the rent and utilities while I handled groceries, cooking, and chores. I don't make enough as a personal trainer to cover everything on my own, and I let my certifications lapse months ago because we planned on me being a traditional stay-at-home wife and mother after the wedding, which is something I really wanted. I've started packing my things and will be moving back in with my parents. I haven't told them the full story yet, just that the wedding is off. They've been supportive, but I know the full conversation is coming, and it's going to be excruciating. My friends are avoiding me, too. Some have unfollowed me on social media, and Claire hasn't responded to any of my messages since she told Alex. I don't even know how to begin rebuilding my life from this. I've lost everything that mattered to me because of one selfish, stupid decision. Alex was my rock, my future, and the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it all away for nothing. I betrayed him in the worst way possible, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. He won't even talk to me. It's driving me crazy that I can't at least apologize to him in person. To Michael, real name, I know you'll never see this, I'm sorry. I know my apology means nothing, but I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. You deserve so much better, and I failed you in every way that mattered. I know that when I'm old and gray, even if I find someone else, you'll always be in my heart. Update 2. I moved back in with my parents on Tuesday. I had been stalling because packing up our place made me feel like I was scraping the last pieces of my old life off the floor and dropping them in a box. I kept finding stupid little things that hurt me more than the obvious big things, like the list on our fridge we wrote together of meals we wanted to try in January when we got back from the honeymoon, and a grocery receipt where he'd circled lemons and wrote for your morning water. With a smiley face. I left the sticky note there longer than I should have liked if I didn't peel it off. This wasn't real. I finally took it, folded it until it was a hard little square, and shoved it into my pocket like a talisman I don't deserve. I told my parents everything that night. I sat at their kitchen table because I thought if I told it there, the place where my mom taught me how to measure flour by leveling it with a knife and my dad would sit with a spoon and steal a bite of sauce no matter what you said, I might feel anchored enough not to float away. I didn't do the soft version. I just said it, that I cheated. That I knew what I was doing. That it wasn't a mistake like tripping on a sidewalk, it was a decision I made with my whole body and then immediately wanted to carve out of myself. My mom cried without looking at me at first, which is somehow worse than crying at someone. My dad stared at the table like he expected the wood grain to move. He said, "We love you," and then after a long quiet, "I don't know you right now." He wasn't being cruel, he sounded like someone who walked into his house and found out the couch was made of sand. My mom reached across and held my hands even when I didn't deserve it, and I watched her thumb go over the old dent in my ring from when I banged it on the car door, the ring Alex didn't want back. The ring is in its box now. I couldn't look at it, so I wrapped the box in a hand towel and buried it under folded sweaters in my parents' guest room dresser. It feels radioactive. I keep thinking he told me to keep it because he wanted to make me carry something heavy. Mark said it wasn't about money. Maybe it was his way of throwing a weight back at me so I'd know what it felt like not to be able to set something down ever again. I thought about selling it for 1 minute and then I felt like I was going to throw up. The idea of benefiting from it in any way makes me feel like one of those people you cross the street to avoid. I also thought about leaving it on the porch at Alex's parents' house like some horrible fairy tale offering. I didn't. I don't get to set the terms anymore. Wednesday I went to urgent care because my period is late and I haven't been eating and my heart won't slow down and I can't tell if my stomach hurts from fear or if I did something else awful entirely. I sat on a plastic chair under a TV that was playing some cooking show where they were frying something and all I could think about was the smell of Alex's mom's chicken noodle soup and how he brought it to me when I was lying and pretending to be sick. The urine test was negative. The nurse was kind and asked me if I wanted STI screening too and I said yes, with this strange little voice that didn't sound like mine, like a polite library version of me. She said sometimes people turn up late when they're stressed. She told me to drink water. I went home and drank water like it was a punishment. I texted Jake because even after telling him to never contact me again, I needed him to go get tested too in case something was wrong and I didn't want to sit in it alone. He replied, "I'm clean. I always use protection." I'll send you the paperwork if you want, and then, I've been thinking about you. I blocked him after that. I don't want his paperwork. I don't want his thoughts. I want a time machine. On Thursday a package came by courier with Alex's handwriting on the label, except it wasn't his handwriting because he didn't do it. It was typed, but the return address was Mark's office. Inside was a check with a note on a plain piece of paper in Mark's blocky pen that said, "This covers your portion of the vendor cancellations per our contracts. Please don't contact Alex." There was a list attached where he had done the math. He had my portion higher than it should have been, so I couldn't argue that they were off about anything small and get an excuse to text him about it. I stared at the check and felt more exposed than if I'd been standing in the street naked. I tore it in half even though I know that's childish, and then I taped it back together because I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't cashed it. It sits on my desk like a dare. Claire finally answered me. She sent a text that said, "Can we talk?" And then nothing. I told her to pick a place. We met at this coffee shop we used to go to after yoga because they did a turmeric latte she would always say tasted like a sock and then drink anyway. I got there early and sat in my car rehearsing not throwing my drink at her and not begging her to go back in time and make one different decision somewhere. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not thinner, smaller, like a photo that got printed at the wrong size. She hugged me and I didn't hug her back. She started crying before she sat down, and I hated her for making me feel like I had to comfort the person who lit the match near my life even though the match left my hand. She told me that Jake had reached out to her a week before the party. He told her he wanted to apologize to me. She said she didn't tell me because she thought I would say no, and I thought maybe you needed to see him say sorry to your face and close it for real. And then she said, "And I didn't think you'd do what you did," which is almost laughable except it's not. Claire said she didn't tell anyone else he was coming because she thought everyone would make it a big deal and she wanted it to be a moment, and that I always second guess myself, and she wanted me to have control over this one thing, and I honestly don't know if she believes what she's saying or if she's rewritten it in her head to make it not look like she invited a fox into a henhouse because she liked the idea of feathers in the air. I asked her if she took that picture. She shook her head no so fast that her bun came loose. She said she didn't see us go into the room. She said she didn't know how anyone got that picture, and I believe her about that one thing because if she'd sent it to Alex, she would have told me by now and worn it like a hair shirt. She said she told Alex because he deserved the truth. I told her we are done being friends. She said she understands. She said I'm not the only one who lost a friend, and then she clapped a hand over her own mouth like she knew as she said it that she was trying to make it about her. I left my drink on the table and went out into the cold and sat in my car and screamed until my throat hurt, and then I drove 2 blocks and pulled over because I couldn't see the road. Friday night I got a message from a woman named Lily. She said she used to date Alex in high school and that she got my number from a mutual friend who is a nurse at my mom's hospital. She said she wasn't reaching out to be cruel. She said she saw the post and she wanted to tell me that Alex is a good man and that he does the thing where he believes in the story of something and you feel lifted up by that, and that when people break that story for him, it's like watching someone take scissors to a book he's been writing since he was a kid. She said she wanted me to know he would be okay eventually and that the best thing I could do for him is leave him alone so the story can change without me dragging the old chapter back onto his desk. Then she said she was sorry in a way that didn't feel like she was placing herself above me. I cried reading it because I could hear the girl in her and the adult in her fighting with each other. I didn't write back. There was nothing to say. She needed to be able to look at herself in the mirror for reaching out, and I needed to sit still. On Saturday I brought the letter to Mark's house. I'd been writing it all week in pieces in my parents' guest room, at the DMV when I went to change my address, in the line at the pharmacy, on the back of an old grocery list in my coat pocket, over and over until the pen started to carve the words into the paper like little trenches. It wasn't a defense and it wasn't a plea. It was a record. It said I am sorry without attaching any price tag or expectation to his forgiveness. It said I know he's not a character in my story anymore who can be moved around by my sentences. It said the thing about the ring and how I don't want it, but I will do whatever he thinks respects him most. It said I will not contact him again after this unless he contacts me. I put the ring in the box inside the envelope because it felt right to try to give it back, to make my hands visible, not holding on to something that wasn't mine to carry. Mark opened the door and looked like he hadn't slept. He didn't invite me in. He didn't need to. He took the envelope and said he would pass it on. He didn't make small talk or ask me how my parents were. He said, he's not going to respond. I said, I know. He said, good, and then softer like he remembered he is a person and not just a very tired wall, I hope you get help. It wasn't a knife, it was a hand pushing my shoulder in the direction of a therapist's office. Sunday morning, in church, I saw Alex's mom across the aisle. I went because my mom asked me to and because when I was a kid this place always felt like a pause button. Alex's parents and my parents used to sit together sometimes. Not this time. She walked out after the service and I almost didn't go after her because what right did I have to make her morning heavier, but I went anyway because I had to say it to her face. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or slap me. I said, I'm sorry, and it felt like a limp balloon in my mouth. She said, you broke my son. She said it like she'd just seen a car accident and I was still holding the steering wheel. Then she said, he's with his cousin for a while. Don't go looking. I said, I won't, and I meant it because even if seeing him would make some animal part of me feel sated for 5 seconds, it would hurt him and that is my main job. Now, not to do that. She said, I loved you, and I nodded because I had felt it and that makes this worse. Then she said, take care of yourself. If you don't fix whatever is wrong, you'll do this again. She didn't say it with malice. She said it like you tell someone to take their antibiotics all the way through, not just until they feel better. On what should have been my rehearsal dinner night, I went to our venue to pick up the box of favors I had stupidly left there. The manager had set them aside for me in a room that smelled like refrigerated air and old flowers. The room where we were going to have our first dance was being set for some other couple's holiday party and there were red napkins and people laughing in a way the walls had memorized. The girl at the desk handed me the box and asked if I wanted to leave any for donation to the hospital down the street and I said yes and took one for myself. It's a little glass jar of honey with a tag that says, meant to be. I sat in my car and wanted to throw it so hard it shattered in the parking lot but instead I unscrewed it and ate it with my finger and let it coat my mouth until I felt sick and I thought about so many sticky things I could say here about mistakes and sweetness but there's no poetry I can use to make this decent. I cancelled my dress pickup. They'd finished the last alterations and I had to go in and stand on the little platform anyway and tell them to cut the sleeves off because I couldn't stand how that made me think of being held and I let the woman pin it and the pins felt like bug bites. The seamstress said, it's a shame, and then she apologized for saying that. I told her it was. I brought the dress home and I zipped it into a garment bag that used to smell like new fabric and now it smells like nothing and I hung it in my parents' guest room closet. I thought about donating it and then I thought about keeping it because you don't erase things by pretending they didn't happen. They just grow mold. Monday I made an appointment with a therapist. I called 3 numbers and the first 2 were full and the third woman answered in a voice that sounded like somebody's favorite teacher and she gave me a time for Friday. I told my mom and she said, good, and she made soup without saying she was making soup because I needed it. I printed out the forms where it asked me about past trauma and present issues and substance use and I felt like I was checking boxes in a scavenger hunt I didn't know I'd entered. I wrote down Jake's name like it was a curse I was laying down once and for all and then I drew a line through the paper by accident and liked how it felt to cross something out. I'm writing this on what would have been our wedding day. I woke up at 4 a.m. and sat in the dark for a while and thought about the way light comes through a white dress when the sun is behind it and what it would have looked like on our photographer's camera and then I got up and brushed my teeth because you can't sit in the dark forever without your mouth starting to feel foul. I drove to the lake where we took our engagement photos. It's December and the water looked like something you spill and then try to mop up with a towel that's already wet. I sat on a cold bench until my fingers hurt and then I read the letter I wrote to Alex again even though I know I won't hear back and then I burned the copy I kept in an old candle jar like I was sending smoke signals no one will ever read. I thought maybe he would show up because my brain still likes to write little movies, but he didn't, and I don't know if he ever comes here, or if all my places are poison to him now. I went home and I helped my mom peel potatoes because there are always potatoes at my parents' house and the rhythm of the peeler made me feel like I was doing something right for 5 minutes, clean strips, dirty strips, something taken away that needed to be taken away. If you're still reading this, I don't have a bow to tie it with. I don't have a miracle. I have a calendar with marks on it where I count days without reaching for my phone to check if his status is green. I have a block number with Jake's name under it and if he tries to slither through one of the cracks again, I'll fill the crack with concrete. I have a friend-shaped hole where Claire used to be that I am not going to fill with a person who thinks lighting a fire is a way to get warm. I have a negative pregnancy test and a printout that says my STI tests came back negative and I am more grateful for those clean sheets of paper than I've ever been grateful for anything and that makes me feel both lucky and disgusting at once, like I cheated on bad outcomes the way I cheated on Alex, except this time the universe didn't collect. I don't know if I'll ever hear his voice again. Part of me wants to dial the old voicemail just to listen to his hey, it's me, but I won't because every time I do something that feeds me in a small way, I starve him in a bigger one by dragging him back toward me. I wrote in my letter that if he wanted me to donate the ring or keep it or leave it at Mark's, I would do exactly that, and Mark texted me last night and said, he doesn't want it. Do whatever you want with it, which I knew he would say because that is how he lets a thing be finished. I think I'm going to put it in a safety deposit box and leave it there like a time capsule I'll never open. Not because I'm saving it for someone else. Because it's not a piece of jewelry anymore, it's an artifact of a life I detonated and I need to stop carrying shrapnel in my pockets. If I ever get married, and that feels like talking about flying to Mars right now, I will stand up in front of whatever poor man is foolish enough to love me and I will have to talk about this without turning it into a story where I am the star and the lesson and the redemption all at once. I won't say it as a confessional to get pats on the head. I will say it because being honest will be the only way I know how to do anything from now on. But that's Mars. Today is Earth and it's cold and my mom is humming in the kitchen and my dad asked me if I wanted to watch football with him later, and I said yes even though I hate football, because you can sit next to someone and they can like something and you can like them and that is a kind of love too, even for someone like me who broke the good thing and has to learn how to be around good things again without smashing them. I know now that time doesn't carry things away like a river. Time sets them down and you decide whether you're going to haul them around on your back or whether you're going to put them in a box and label them and go to therapy and cook dinner and go to work and pay your bills and let yourself be ordinary. I'm going to try to be ordinary. I'm going to re-up my certification. I'm making flashcards like a teenager and I feel stupid and hopeful and scared. I'm going to get a job at a gym that smells like rubber and eucalyptus and sweat and not roses and cake, and I'm going to be tired at the end of the day for the right type of reasons. I'm going to keep my head down and earn trust one tiny unremarkable decision at a time until maybe one day I recognize myself. If you're wondering if the pain goes away over time, it doesn't. Not the way you want it to. It just changes shape and sometimes it fits into your pocket and sometimes it lays across your chest like a sleeping dog and you can't move without waking it. You learn to breathe around it. You learn to live with it without letting it be the only furniture in your house. That's where I am today. I keep seeing him in my head, the way he looked at me the night he brought me the soup and stood in our doorway like he wanted to come closer and like I was a cliff. I will see that for a long time. I deserve to. I love him. That's the worst of it and the only pure thing left. If anything happens, if he calls or if he gets married before me or if I accidentally run into him at a grocery store and we both look away at the same time because that's the kindest thing, I'll write it here. But for now I'm done. I'm going to go mash potatoes with my mom and watch a game with my dad and try to be a person who can sit in a room without breaking it. That's all I can do. That and hope that somewhere in the world tonight, he laughs at something stupid and forgets me for a minute. That would be my favorite punishment and my favorite mercy at the same time. Update 3. I did the thing you do when you want an answer and you're scared of the answer. I bought 3 different brands of tests because my brain thinks if you get a committee together, the truth will be softer. I took the first one in my parents' downstairs bathroom with a curling wallpaper seam and the nightlight shaped like a seashell. 2 lines bloomed like a bruise, fast and unapologetic. I watched the color come up the way you watch weather roll in from across a lake, knowing it's going to hit you whether you stand outside or crawl under the bed. I set it on the edge of the sink because I didn't know how to hold it without making it more real. The second test was the same. The third, too. I lined them up and they looked like a tiny picket fence I didn't know how to get through. My mom knocked and asked if I wanted tea and I said no thank you with a voice I used to use when I was 11 and trying not to cry about not being invited to Caitlin's birthday party. Then I opened the door and handed her one of the sticks because there are some things you can't put into words without fainting. She pressed her lips together and then she did that thing where she fixes her face into neutral so the other person doesn't collapse because of your collapse. She sat me down and said, "Okay. Just that. Okay." It's a small word and it felt like a raft that could hold both of us. I called my therapist and told her. I hadn't seen her yet when I wrote last. Her name is Janice and she has a way of sitting so still it makes you aware of the places your body is trying to leap out of itself. In our first session, before the tests, she asked me to tell her the story without trying to make myself likable. I failed at that a few times and she would just tilt her head and say, "That's you protecting yourself with language. Let's try again." After the tests, when I told her, she didn't say anything wise immediately. She asked me to take a breath and then another because apparently I'd been doing micro inhales like I was trying to live between heartbeats. She said, "We are going to talk about all the branches of this tree, but first let's find the trunk." The trunk is that the timing is a mess. The trunk is that I had sex with 2 different men 1 week apart. The trunk is that one of them was going to be my husband and the other one I wish I'd never met. The trunk is that no matter what, a person might come out of this who did not ask for any of it. She said all the branches are important too, money and work and family and shame and what I want and what I think I deserve and what I owe other people, but the trunk has to be seen first. I sat with that until I felt like I was a piece of furniture someone had moved to get at the dust underneath. I texted Mark because of the no contact and because my hands were shaking too hard to write another letter. I wrote, "I need to tell Alex something. I don't want to hurt him but he should know. I won't call him." He wrote back 10 minutes later, "Say it here." I typed and deleted the words a dozen times because I'm pregnant looks different on a blue screen. It looks like 2 words you could put in a song if you wanted to ruin a stadium. I pressed send. The little delivered dot showed up and I stared at it like it was going to become an answer. The typing bubble came and went twice and then nothing for an hour where I paced the hallway and wanted to peel my skin off. Then he wrote, "I'll tell him. Do not contact him directly." 20 minutes after that, he says communicate any medical updates through me only. He does not want to hear from you. Then, another, he wants paternity testing when it's possible. He is not discussing anything further. I cried into the dish towel like I had a fever. Not because I expected him to say anything else, not because he did anything wrong, just because seeing his existence narrowed down to something that looks like a line item on a schedule felt like the exact opposite of what we used to be to each other. I typed okay to Mark because there is nothing else to say when someone gives you boundaries strong enough to stand on. The clinic took my blood. The phlebotomist tied the rubber strap and said, "Make a fist," and I thought about how stupidly brave those words are for something so small. Beta numbers, they call it, like you're in a lab and not a life. They handed me a pamphlet with a watercolor baby on it that made me want to rip it in half and also tuck it into a book so I could find it in 10 years and hate who I was and love who I became in the same second. I made an appointment for a follow-up and I walked to my car and sat with my forehead on the steering wheel until the seat belt burned a line across my chest. Jake got through on a number I didn't recognize. I picked up because I thought it was the office calling with results and his voice slid into my ear like oil. I heard. "Claire told me," he said, and for a second I saw myself reaching through the phone and grabbing him by the collar of his shirt and shaking him hard enough that the letters fell out of his words. I hung up without answering. He sent a string of messages from another number, about buying vitamins and talking and taking responsibility, and then one that said, "I think this is a sign." I blocked that one too, and then I threw up in the parking lot, and it wasn't morning sickness. It was that feeling when you realize the ground you're standing on is someone else's idea of a joke. I took the ring to the bank. Not to hand it back like a dramatic flourish. To do the boring adult thing and get the safety deposit box I said I would. The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and pens on chains. The woman at the counter asked me if I wanted to add a second authorized user, and I thought about adding my mom, and then I thought about Alex's name next to mine on a form in a place where people keep their important things, and I shook my head no so hard that the woman blinked. I put the box in the little drawer and slid it shut, and it made a sound that felt like the opposite of an ocean shell. No roar, just a soft hiss like a secret being kept whether you like it or not. I took my certification exam. That feels absurd to write next to everything else, but life insists you have to keep your appointments even if your world is in the middle of breaking its own rules. I sat in a cubicle with a pair of noise-canceling headphones and a scratch pad, and I read questions about the best way to cue a deadlift and when to refer clients out for medical clearance, and my brain kept trying to braid those sentences together with the words high risk and gestational age, and I had to unbraid them over and over. I passed. The screen popped up with the word congratulations. And I stared at it until it blurred and thought about how sometimes good news arrives wearing the wrong clothes. The proctor said, "Nice work," and handed me my paper, and I took it like it was a fragile plate I could break if I looked too directly at it. I started at a small gym nearby, the kind of place with an old school leg press that creaks and a chalk bowl nobody uses because we're not that kind of gym. The manager is a woman named Mariah who wears her hair in a perpetually messy ponytail and swears lovingly at the water cooler. I told her I needed day shifts and that some mornings I might have to be late for doctor stuff, and I saw the calculation happen in her eyes. And then she said, "If you show up and do the work, I don't care if you have to run to the moon and back on your lunch break. We all have lives." She gave me a stack of intake forms and a schedule. I folded myself into it. It felt like a place to put my hands. My first client was a retired math teacher named Hank, whose knees sound like popcorn, and who told me on the second session that his wife of 41 years still hides the good chocolate in the flour canister, and he lets her because he likes being surprised on purpose. He said, "The body forgives, but you have to give it something to forgive with," and I almost sank to the floor because I wanted that to be metaphysical, and he was just talking about hamstring curls. I told my dad. Not in a dramatic reveal. We were fixing a cabinet hinge because the door kept drifting open, and he asked me to hold it steady while he drilled. You'd think that's an easy thing, to hold something in the exact spot it needs to be, but your arms get tired and it slips, and if you let it slip you strip the screw, and then good luck ever getting it to sit right again. He finished and wiped his hand on his jeans, and I said, "I'm pregnant." His face did a small thing, like a muscle twitch you get when you're exhausted. He leaned his hip against the counter and said, "We'll figure this out," and then, "I'm mad at you and I love you." Both things. It landed like a truth that could stand on its own legs. Alex sent one message through Mark after the lab confirmed the numbers were rising. Noted. It was the opposite of every card he ever gave me, with his stupid little drawings in the margins and the way he always wrote 1 2 many exclamation points because he said periods looked like the end of something. Mark added, "He wants a paternity test at birth. He will not be at any appointments. Do not share photos." I said okay. I asked if there was anything he wanted me to do with items of his I found in a box in my trunk, a couple of baseball caps and a jacket he wore the night we got stuck at the airport and ate vending machine dinner on the floor. Mark said he'd send someone by. A kid from the office came with a reusable grocery bag and didn't look me in the eye when he took it. I watched him walk to a car I didn't recognize. I imagined Alex not in that passenger seat, and it still felt like something leaving. At church a little girl sat in front of us with a braid so tight it looked like a rope you could climb, and I had to leave halfway through because my whole chest felt like it was going to flip inside out. My mom followed me to the vestibule and handed me a peppermint, and we stood in the cold hallway and sucked peppermint, and I breathed like a person again. It's funny how there are foods that fix nothing, and a peppermint is one of them, and still you get through the next 10 minutes. I haven't seen Alex. I almost did. I was in line at the pharmacy picking up prenatals, and a man walked in behind me in a navy coat that could have been his, and my body recognized the cut of his shoulders before my brain, the way you recognize a song from 2 notes. It wasn't him. It was a stranger who grabbed a bag of cough drops and left a crumpled dollar bill on the counter. I stood there with my vitamins like a person in a commercial for a life she didn't order. Janice asked me to write down what I want, like the version where nobody else exists and it's just me and the inside of my skull. I wanted to answer like a good student. I wanted to tell her I want to make amends and be whole and raise a child who never has to know that I almost split in half trying to decide if I was worthy of being their mother. I wanted to say the noble thing, and then I wanted to scream the petty selfish things too, like I want Alex to hold me while I cry and tell me it's going to be okay, and I want to go back in time and staple my arms to my sides. Janice said, "One is allowed in here. One isn't a crime. It's just a signal." So I wrote it all down. I wrote that I want to be a person who doesn't burn the bridge just to prove she doesn't need it. I wrote that I want a small life that feels like mine and not an audition. There's a clinic 2 towns over that does more than just take blood and give pamphlets. I made an appointment there too because I am not going to pretend that the decision is easy or done just because the lines turn pink. They sat me in a room with a chair that reclines too far and a box of tissues that looks like a joke. A counselor named Elise asked me questions I didn't know I knew the answers to until my mouth said them. She talked about timelines and options and how all of them have consequences and all of them have mercy in them if you let them. On the way home I drove past a bridal store where the windows were full of white and the mannequins had no heads, and I laughed out loud at a red light and then clapped a hand over my mouth like I'd said something terrible. It wasn't funny. It was the timing, like the universe doing a bit without asking if I was in on it. I haven't made a choice. That seems like a betrayal to some imaginary audience I keep trying to perform for, but it's the truth. I am giving myself the short inside of winter to make it. Not because I want to drag it out, but because I don't trust the part of me that likes to slam doors. Janice says urgency can be a trauma costume. She says to look at the corners, not just the front door. The corners look like a tiny rented room for me and a baby if I do this alone, and a schedule full of clients who need me to count to 12 slowly while my brain counts weeks, and holidays where I will have to decide who gets to hold a small person with my eyes, and the way it will feel the first time I run into Alex at a grocery store and there's a stroller between us like a brick wall. The corners look like me in another universe dropping into a different kind of chair and not being a mother and living with that echo and making my life fit around the space where a person might have been. Both are hard. Both are possible. Both require me to be honest in a way I haven't been with myself in years. Claire sent me a picture of the lake at dawn and a single word, sorry. I didn't answer. She doesn't get to use my sunrise anymore. A mutual friend told me she and Jake were seen at a bar together and my stomach did a small unpleasant dance that I'm embarrassed to admit wasn't all discussed. Part of me wanted to see them and think, of course. Part of me wanted her to be smarter than that. But I don't run the part of me factory anymore, it runs itself, apparently, and my job is crowd control. At the gym, a woman my age with a ring on her finger and a ponytail like mine asked me if I'd do a prenatal session for her because she's 12 weeks and nervous about everything. I said yes. I led her through bird dogs and clamshells and talked about breath and pelvic floor and stumbled on the word congratulations, and she didn't notice because she was busy trying to balance on one knee and one hand and also build a person. She said she feels like she swallowed a planet, and I laughed with her, and it didn't feel like a betrayal of anyone, even me. I mailed Mark a copy of my first ultrasound appointment card with the date and time blacked out except for the week count like he asked. He sent back a single period. A period from the man who told me once that periods look like endings. I stared at that dot on my phone and it looked like the simplest kind of mercy he could give me, no questions. No argument. Just the acknowledgement that he got the information and we are doing this by the book because the book is the only thing keeping anybody from drowning. Last night my mom fell asleep on the couch with a magazine open on her chest and my dad put a blanket over her and smoothed her hair back, and I watched it happen like you watch someone fold a clean shirt. I went upstairs and sat in the guest room with the dress bag like an extra person in the corner, and I slid my hand along the plastic and thought, not for the first time, about who I would have been if I had found a way to sit with discomfort last month without lighting a match. I don't have an answer. I write all of this down because it keeps me from becoming a fog bank. The ground is real. The floor is under my feet. There are things to be done tomorrow, 7 a.m. session with Hank, 10 o'clock with Mariah's bar class because the instructor called out, and a phone call I don't want to make to confirm the next set of labs. I keep waiting for some grand gesture from the universe, something to tell me I am pointed the right way. Instead I get small things, the peppermint melting. Hank telling me he hit parallel on his squat and his eyes getting shiny like he just found out he could still surprise himself. My dad setting an extra mug on the counter without asking if I wanted coffee because sometimes you don't need to be asked, you need to be handed. A text from an unknown number at 2 a.m. that was just a photo of a snowman with a crooked carrot nose. I deleted it because I'm not playing that game anymore, but I looked at it first, and for 3 seconds I was a kid again, and my biggest decision was whether to steal the good chocolate from the flour canister. If anything changes in a way that isn't just me getting up and going to work and doing tiny morally neutral tasks, I'll put it here. For now, I'm going to floss because I have an appointment with the dentist next week, and it turns out your teeth don't care if your life fell down the stairs. They want what they want. So does a body. So does a heart. I'm trying to listen to all three and not let any of them be the only one in charge. It's not a neat ending. It's a Tuesday night with a glass of water on the nightstand and a stack of prenatal vitamins like dice I don't know how to throw. It's me, not touching my phone, not writing a message I'll regret, breathing like a person who isn't running. That's something. It's not everything. But it's something.